And then I like BLG, our buddy Brandon Lee Gouton, has the best spin on assistant coaches. Look, you want to lose assistant coaches because what does that mean? That means you're successful.
Welcome in, everybody, a Friday edition of Birds 365, our last football Friday for a couple of weeks. We'll call it, as our guy in the chat here this morning, Jason Flores, says, going forward, it'll be a feel-good Friday until this team gets back on the field. But minicamp is in the books. Johnny Mac, how you feeling on this Friday?
Good. It's over. Pajamas are over. Let's get to it. Let's move. Let's get forward. Let's go. Get training camp.
It went quick, Johnny Mac. Couple things happening in Eagle Land, though. Some good news came out yesterday. Some staff changes. A lot of talk being made about what Jalen Hurts and Nick Serianni had to say at the podium yesterday. Lurie put a percentage of his ownership. He's looking for maybe a buyer, maybe looking to cash out a couple % of his ownership. Quinyon signed.
He's going to pay for that yacht.
Yeah, right. So, nothing big there. I don't think it'll change anything for Eagles fans, just trying to maybe cash out, like I said, a little percentage of that massive increase he's had since he owned it. And then the last piece of news I thought, which was good, and we'll hit the staff changes with Big Dom and stuff, but Quinyon signed so that all of your rookies, all of your 2024 rookies are officially under contract for the Philadelphia Eagles. So we knew nothing to worry there, but it is worth noting that Quinyon is done. And the rookie class is all signed and under contract. So pretty good stuff. Johnny Mac, let's go to day 3 yesterday. I know you said it was a little bit more of an off-the-field type of day, but what did you see down there at day 3 yesterday?
Yeah, shorter practice, no surprise. Day 3 of minicamp, get out of school day, more second team and third team work than the first team, and more of a laid-back atmosphere. So no surprise from that perspective. And the bigger news, because it's funny, everybody's going on vacation, from the coaches to the front office to Jeffrey Lurie himself. So you want to button up all this work that's got to be done, or try to get as much work. So they, you talked about Jeffrey and that news breaking from Bloomberg, and he's probably looking. He's 72 years old. He's probably. I think a lot of people don't understand the Eagles may be worth. I forget the valuation, $8 billion, whatever they call it.
7.5 billion in the Bloomberg article.
Yes, 7.5 billion. Which those valuations are nonsense. It's basically, is somebody willing to pay that? So anytime you see those Forbes things, they're all nonsense. It's 11 times revenue. Who came up with that? The brand of the NFL is sort of what drives things. And, if he ever did want to sell the team, he could probably get near that range. So I'm not saying it's out of, but I wouldn't get too worked up. Some people get worked up about that stuff. That's only why I bring that up. But from a liquidity standpoint, he's got this asset worth $7.5 billion or somewhere in that range. That doesn't mean you have $7.5 billion in the bank. And, he bought, some reports say $150 million yacht. So, sometimes you need to get a little bit more liquid. And he's 72 years old. He probably wants to do some stuff.
Yeah, I don't blame him for that.
He likes to travel. So I wouldn't get worked up about it. It's not anything involving a potential significant ownership controlling stake down the road. So I wouldn't worry about that at all when it comes to Jeffrey Lurie, and even the succession plan to Julian Lurie, which will still likely come down the road. But as far as the staff changes, I guess from a fan standpoint, they're going to pay the most notice to Dom because they all know Dom. But they
Big Dom, the celebrity of Big Dom.
The legend grows.
Exploded in the last 6
The legend grows. Yeah, Dom's got the biggest title in the world now. He's one of the biggest dudes. So he's senior advisor to the general manager, which he always was, chief security officer. Now he's game day coaching operations chief. So basically that was a reaction to the NFL banning him after the dust up with Dre Greenlaw. So now he's supposed to be on the sidelines. And that's basically all that's about. But they're
skating by those rules, right? That kind of got them kicked out.
Exactly. So that was a reaction to that. That one guy, Bryce Johnston, who's sort of we people watch this show know he's sort of the replacement. I don't want to say replacement, but he was the heir apparent to Jake Rosenberg and doing a lot of the similar things that Jake did. And he was elevated from a vice president to a senior vice president, tertiary football executive. Nice one, Howie. Tertiary football executive, Bryce Johnson. So, and that's another term for a bigwig. He's a bigwig now, and he's pretty much Howie's chief assistant when it comes to contracts and all that kind of stuff. And then a bunch of guys went from the director level to the vice president level. Adam Berry, who's Andrew Berry's younger brother, is now vice president of football operations and strategy. Jeff Scout is now vice president of football operations. Those are football ops guys. And then on the scouting side, Chuck Walls and Alan Wolking were both promoted to vice president of player personnel, had been directors. So they went from the director level to the vice president level. And then guys missing, that's the bigger news, probably Ted Rath, who seems to be the guy paying for Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis for some reason. I don't, you're going to blame Ted Rath for that. And I don't know if that's the case. But there's some, and Jeff McLean put something out, some nature of that. And I'm like, why don't you blame Kirby Smart if that's the case? I mean, what are you kidding me? You're going to blow out a guy because Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter didn't have the conditioning to, and in Jalen's case, it's a rookie player.
Yeah, is that really what they hung the hat on?
I don't know. I haven't confirmed that. I hope not. But anyway, he's gone. And Fernando Noriega was always ahead of him, so he is still in his director of player performance and sports science and the head strength and conditioning coach. So he's still here, but yeah, I mean, I hope that's not the case, is all I say. So, Ted was the vice president of player performance. And if he was paying for those guys, I mean, come on. That to me is an overreaction. But I don't know if that's the case. I just address it because some other people had put that out there that perhaps that was the reason.
Yeah, so we'll see if anything more comes out on that. Johnny Mac, I want to welcome, before I go to Johnny Mac's next question here, I want to welcome everybody in this morning. William Burney, a resident Cowboy fan in the chat, Paul Mancini, Mid Supply, Dank, Joho. We appreciate everybody for being here this morning. SMD Eagles, Slagger 57, Jason 18, Wolverine, anybody I missed. We appreciate you all for being in the chat. Make sure you guys drop a like on the show this morning, as it helps us grow and it helps us reach more Eagles fans so we can make more Eagles fans knowledgeable on this football team. So we appreciate you all being here. Johnny Mac, just to real quick go back to it and glaze over it. Not much from practice yesterday, right? Not a lot of offense, not a lot of first team stuff, not as much happening out there yesterday on the field. A little bit more of a relaxed day. You saw a couple of the Eagles and the owner down at the NBA Finals Game 1 in Boston. They must have all jumped on Lurie's jet and flew to Boston.
Yeah, every once in a while you see Jeffrey's love of Boston, and there you get it.
Devontae Smith's a big Celtics fan.
He's a huge Celtics
AJ Brown was there. Jalen Hurts was there. Jordan Mailata was there. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Is it? That's typically something that some will balk at. And now I won't. But
the NBA Finals, man, they're going to go and enjoy the NBA Finals.
No, but but they're excited about the Celtics. That's the part I'm talking about.
Yeah,
which, for me, and that stuff doesn't bother me. But that was my team growing up. That's the team that I actually liked the most, was the Sixers. So I hated the Celtics growing up. Now then I grew up and I don't give a crap. Yeah. In fact, I probably dislike the Sixers at this point because of the way they've been run over the years.
What a train wreck that organization has been.
Yeah. But, you know, a lot of people give Josh Harris crap because he owns, oh, how do you own a Philadelphia team? And now you're on the Washington Commanders and the New Jersey Devils before. So I don't know. I thought maybe some people would give him some crap. I know
Well,
Janelle Pumphrey
people
used to,
certainly have given him crap for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, not a big deal though. You're right.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. So, staff changes. Lurie's putting some of the team up for sale. What'd you make, John, of the? Let's go to the press conferences because a lot of people were talking about Jalen Hurts' comment on 95% of the offense
Yeah, I had a
being
big week.
new.
That was my question.
Yeah,
Jalen went
Johnny
off
Mac,
on a
you have been crushing it, by the way, this week,
stream
man. Your
stream of
questions are
consciousness.
making headlines, McMullen.
Yeah, stream of consciousness. Clearly, Jalen wanted that out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Jalen is not, one to, say he's very guarded. Whatever he says, he wants out there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And by the way, I take it as a good thing because I've kind of said I did not like this setup of there was some lip service to, and Xander, I said it a bunch.
Yeah.
If you're going to hire Kellen Moore, you got to hire Kellen Moore. You can't say, "Oh, hey, Kellen, you're the offensive coordinator, but you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do that." From what we were doing before, I always thought that was a very bad way to handle the situation. And simply because you're forcing somebody to do something that they're not learning and they're not evolving, and it should take care of itself. If Jalen and is what he is as a player that we know, and Kellen Moore's as good as an offensive coordinator as they're spinning, he'll figure it out what Jalen Hurts does well. So that'll happen in a natural evolution. And the fact that Jalen said it's 95% new, which is, just a bullshit nebulous number, but it's new. It's all new, basically.
Yeah, I think his point was that, there's a lot of new stuff going on here.
Yeah. And that to me is good for a number of it explains some of the struggles of the spring for the first team offense, and I think that's the way they should do it.
What's it mean about Nick Serianni for you, John?
You're going to be hearing more about that as we get closer to training camp. There's stuff we embargo for now, but it's I see it from both perspectives, in the fact that a lot of people are consumed with the idea that the head coach needs to call plays. I've never been consumed by that. I want my head coach to be the head coach of the entire football team. I don't want him with his head in the iPad when the defense is out there. I don't want him not caring when the special teams are out there.
Well, I agree. And I know you have been very consistent on that, but I will say there has been, ever since Nick became the head coach of the Eagles, he has slowly been dropped responsibilities. Whether they wanted him to be, maybe they wanted him to be the CEO coach, but the reality is he started as the offensive play caller. Then it was Shane Steichen. And then it was Brian Johnson. That was his offense. Now it's Kellen Moore, and it's 95% new, and it's all Kellen's. So my point is, from an outsider's perspective, it looks like Nick's role has continuously been diminished the last 2 to 3 years. Just as a devil's advocate point, I get what you're saying. He's the CEO.
I get, and that's the conventional thinking, and I get it completely. But from my perspective, and I'm not trying to they didn't hire him originally to be CEO coach. I'm not trying to sell that. They hired him to be the play caller and the offensive mind. When Nick got here and he saw, as most people do when they're first time head coaches, it's a flipping big job. And every single coach I've ever spoken to who's in his first job says the same thing. Boy, I didn't know how much time of my day is focused on this and non-football and this and everything. The whole building, logistics, scheduling each day.
Yeah, there's so much stuff thrown at you compared to an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just football. and they all struggle with it. Every single one struggles with it. So I kind of took it in a different direction when he took a step back and handed the play calling to Shane. In that, hey, he recognized how big the job was. He recognized he wasn't happy with some of the mistakes he was making um, on the other areas of the football team, and he rectified it. I consider that a good thing. A lot of people consider it a weakness, and I've asked them that question in the past because that outside perception is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
He's diminished. He's given up. He's this. He's that. He's weak. He can't handle it. Um, I think it's the opposite. I think it's strong to say, you know what, I'm I'm not doing the job I need to do in these other places, and I trust Shane Steichen implicitly. Those two are
Well,
inextricable.
is that speculation that that's how it felt, or are we sure
No,
that this didn't come from
no,
upstairs?
I've talked to Nick about that. Um, Now, look, if they had that 2-5 start and that turned into 4-10, and they're heading down the stretch of the season, he might have been one and done. So that always factors into it. That the success on the field. And I talked to Gannon about that. And that was sort of the big kerfuffle of him giving up play calling. And from Gannon's side, it was like Nick was just because he's not dumb. He knows how it comes across to
Yeah.
some people and how some people are going to take that baton. And Jonathan said that, he just threw it by him, and his answer was essentially fuck him. You know, we're not going to be here anyway if we lose.
Yeah.
Um, and Nick did what he did. He claims that that never happened, that
Well,
meeting.
John,
But
how did the Eagles or forget the Eagles? How does Jeffrey Lurie, the man who hires the head coach, the man who owns the organization, feel about it? If I walk into a shop this morning and I order 12 glazed donuts and they gave me 10 chocolate frosted, I'm going to be like, hey, this isn't what I ordered. He hired him with the assumption he was going to be the play caller. He might be perfectly okay with him not being, but I'm asking the question, do you think he is? Do you think he's not? Do you think they're kind of holding this like, hey, Nick Serianni is on the hot seat? I know he is obviously coming off of last year, but I'm talking specifically about the total
well,
giving up
Jeffrey
of the offense.
Jeffrey has talked about this, and he said he hired one coach to be a play caller in his entire time here. He
Chip
didn't even
Kelly.
hire Andy with the assumption he was going to be the play caller. Now he was, but that wasn't
Right. It wasn't.
forefront of his mind. He hired Andy for his freaking impressive. Basically, he's prepared for everything. So he came in with the binders and the schedule and the assistant coaches and all, and that's why he hired him. It wasn't because he was hiring to be the play caller. So he said the only time he hired, and same with Doug, he didn't, wasn't about Doug did call plays, but it wasn't about I'm hiring him in to be the play caller. And he said the same thing about Nick. Um, Maybe the assumption was gonna call plays, not even the assumption. He
But the
knew it.
point was the decision was
Yes,
probably not hinging on that.
exactly. So could he be lying? I don't think he is, from that standpoint. I know, his standpoint on Andy, so I know he didn't hire him to be the play caller. Um, just happened to work out that way. And he his confirmation is that he hired one coach to be a play caller, and that was Chip Kelly. Um, so no, I don't think it has affected him. But the bottom line is with Jeffrey Lurie, if you're not successful,
Yeah.
you're going to pay for it. So you can go about it. He's going to hire you because he thinks he hires the right person. And then you go do the job. And when you hire first-time coaches, again, and part of my criticism with Brian Johnson and Sean Desai, who was not first time, but he had very little experience, is that Jeffrey's been around long enough to understand that those guys all have growing pains. Shane had them, Nick had them, Jonathan had them, and they went to the Super Bowl. They just came off an example of, look, people wanted to run Nick Serianni out of town at some after his opening Zoom press conference. A bunch of people wanted to run him out of town at 2-5. Even more people when he talked about the flowers. We're talking about Big Dom. You remember the guy throwing flowers at him? I think in Las Vegas it was. Yeah, they wanted him out. So you got to be successful, and he knows he's got to be successful moving forward. And then I like BLG, our buddy Brandon Lee Gouton, has the best spin on assistant coaches. Look, you want to lose assistant coaches because what does that mean? That means you're successful. So hand-wringing about losing coordinators is a waste of time. Unless you want to be bad.
The only problem I have with that, and because I do agree, like if you're a great team, you're going to lose assistants. It happens at every level of football when you're a great team. But I don't love the inconsistency where a new coordinator comes in, example, Kellen Moore, and it's Jalen Hurts is like in his 5th year and he's like 95% new. I would like there to be kind of an offense for the quarterback, if that makes sense. And then you bring in a new mind who might have a flair to it or who might change up some things or who has a couple things, new terminology. But Jalen Hurts is the constant. It might not even, Nick Sirianni might not even be the constant. Jalen Hurts is not going anywhere. That's a fact. So I'd like there to be some consistency there where it's like, nope, for example, just nobody's going to come in as Tom Brady's offensive coordinator and be like, oh, let's start running the RPO.
Some might. Like
yeah, well, I know you get my point though. Like I want there to be consistency, even if it's a new play caller. I feel like Jalen shouldn't have to learn an entire new offense every year. And based on what he said yesterday, it seems he is this year.
He is, but he hasn't been. I mean, he's been in this. That to me, that's kind of overrated about the changing of the coordinators because it's been Nick Sirianni's offense for, 3 seasons prior. And for whatever reason, people want to have it their way always. The change from Shane Steichen to Brian Johnson, same stinking offense. The change from Nick to Shane to Brian, same stinking offense. You're seeing it now with Vic Fangio. Well, the defense looks more on the same page. They've been running this damn scheme for 3 years. Yeah. Now you have a bunch of new players, but different people. And again, it's slightly different because all people are different. But same scheme.
Yeah, I would just like there to be some level of consistency because I think even Jalen has shown that helps him. You just talked about it. There's growing pains. Every time you have something new, there's growing pains. That's life. That's inevitable. So if we can create some level of consistency that to the point where it can be overcome, I think it suits the team to be in a better position.
Now, sorry to interrupt, but I just popped up Twitter. And so somebody tweeted, Jalen Hurts said about 95% of the offense is new, which everybody's tweeted that. That's the big story, right?
Yeah.
And then Diana Rossini, who's a tremendous national reporter for The Athletic, tweets it and says, so in other words, OC Kellen Moore has all the juice in Philly. That's the kind of stuff you're talking about. That's the kind of stuff you get. He doesn't have all the stinking juice in Philly. I mean, what do people really believe that?
Well, he's sitting there. I do think when you couple that with what we talked about earlier, with how it looks on the outside, people are going to make those assumptions. I think it would almost be obvious to assume that they're going to make those type of assumptions. That doesn't mean they're right, but
No, but
Those assumptions are
that's my
gonna
point.
happen.
The Eagles can't worry about that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
and
and I think they
sometimes,
do too much. Well, I don't know if they do, but it appears that they do.
well, because it's a, you can do this kind of stuff in a regular business, and nobody gives a flip, because it's not a public facing industry. The
Yeah, right.
NFL's so, you know, Nick's got to go out there and talk to us time after time after time. Um,
Yeah, they
you
got
know, and
millions of fans watching everything they do
yeah,
to them, yeah.
exactly. But that's the kind of stuff you deal with. And I guarantee everybody in the Novacare complex is rolling their eyes. Kellen Moore has all the juice. That's news to Kellen Moore. Um, you know,
I don't know. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I will say Nick is definitely in the bullseye for me. Just because I wonder, like, even if
well, he's
this
definitely
team,
in the bullseye. That's a different conversation. He's
yeah,
definitely
well,
in
I
the
mean, though, if this team turns it around, right? Like, what if this team's a top 5 offense this year? Does Nick get credit for that? I don't think they're going to give him.
no, he's not
No.
getting credit for that.
Well, I guess he would by default as the head coach of the team, but then they're going to let the
Well,
same
he's
thing
going to be
happen.
the
They're
head
going to let
coach of the
Kellen
team.
Moore
If
walk off
they're
the
if
field.
they're successful, if they're successful, and whether that means going to the Super Bowl, losing the Super Bowl again, or obviously winning the Super Bowl, Nick Sirianni's not going anywhere. Kellen Moore probably is, unless he's a really bad interviewer. Um, and people will give all the credit to Kellen Moore. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And you see it back to the day. It's always, well, the Eagles won their one Super Bowl, and what happened? Well, they lost Frank Reich and they lost John DiFilippo. So it became, well, Frank was in charge and this and that. No, he
Yeah.
wasn't.
No, he wasn't. Yeah.
Um,
I see what you mean. Narratives change depending on
yeah,
what happens. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, no, Nick's not getting credit, but Nick doesn't care about that. If they win the Super Bowl, he's going to be very happy. Um, and the fans are going to be very happy. And maybe the next year they're going to be upset because it's very difficult to repeat and blah blah blah. And they're not as good, and the same narrative will take up. Well, it was Kellen Moore. There's nothing you can do about that. It's just the way it works.
Yeah. There was one thing that Jalen said about that I really liked, and that was when he said, I want to master this offense, but I want to make it mine. And I like that because if what we just said happens, let's say the Eagles are a top 5 offense this year, and let's just say hypothetically Kellen Moore gets hired out of here. There's going to be another new offense coming in. I would like Jalen to be able to have an imprint on what that offense looks like, regardless of who's hired. I think the quarterback should be the constant in the room. The quarterback should be able to make every offense his because that's who it's for. So I don't like the revolving door at coordinator. I got to be honest. I know it's going to
Well,
happen.
you know what? Then be 10-7 and be just good enough.
Yeah, it's true. I guess
And
pick the
or hire the 65-year-old defensive coordinator's probably done head coaching, and
yeah.
he's going to be around if you want him to be around.
I actually think that's the right approach from a defensive standpoint. Guys like Steve Spagnuolo, guys like Jim Schwartz, guys like Vic Fangio, they're not looking to go to the next
That's
rung.
not that
Yeah.
Jim interviewed again. Jim wants to be a head coach again. Steve wants to be a head coach again. Um, yeah, I mean that's not the case. Now, if you go back to Jim Johnson, um, and Vic probably at this stage has kind of said this is it for him. We'll see. I mean, a lot of people say that. He wants to be around Philadelphia because his family lives around here. He's from northeastern Pennsylvania. He's a Phillies fan. He loves the Palladium, all that bull bleep. But
Yeah.
he's got a long history, and his family's from here, so he wants to be around his family. And he knows he's done from a head coaching perspective. And Jim is probably done from a head coaching perspective, but he has not admitted that to himself.
Yeah.
And he's gotten interviews, but the way the league is going, everybody wants offense usually first, few exceptions. So the jobs are a little bit lesser for those guys to begin with. And same with Steve. he's still young enough where he wants to be a head coach. But first, you got to find a team that's willing to go with a defensive guy and that's willing to forget about the first attempt at it. And they still have ambition, those guys.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me for a defensive head coach if you're going to assume if you're successful, your offensive coordinator is going to be rolling in and out anyway. Then I don't mind the defensive, the defensive head coach. John, let me ask you a question though. We're going to get to a break here. We're supposed to have Paul Domwich. He's running a little behind. Maybe I'm not sure if he'll be with us this morning. But in hour number 2,
yeah, I got a text on him.
We'll have Andrew DeCecco in hour number 2, who was down there for minicamp this week too. So good stuff. Let's play hypothetical. Eagles are a top 5 offense this year. Who's the more valuable person to the Philadelphia Eagles? Not to the NFL, to the Philadelphia Eagles. Kellen Moore or Nick Serianni? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if they're going to let Kellen walk here.
Yeah. Well, boy, because I saw that in a couple in the chat. So let me. To me, it's Nick, but let me throw a 180 at you and say, if they win the Super Bowl, that's everybody's goal. I saw somebody say they're not letting Kellen Moore out of the building. So you win the Super Bowl. This is, the goal.
Hypothetical, yeah.
And you think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to fire Nick Sirianni?
In no world
the Super Bowl win?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. That's dumb.
It's true.
And, somebody's going to want, because of the nature of this industry, unless he's a terrible interviewer, somebody's going to want Kellen Moore because he just oversaw a Super Bowl winning offense. And he's going to lead. And that's just how it works. And that's what you should all be hoping for. I would think, so as a fan.
Truth. But you do admit that there would be a question in the. I agree. They're not.
No, I don't think there would be even an inkling of a question in the building. I think there would be massive questions on platforms like this, Sports Talk Radio, not from me, but from fans and things like that. Oh, I expect it, but it's silly. It's silly. It won't even be considered. If Nick Sirianni, who has already been to a Super Bowl, wins a Super Bowl.
No, yeah, you're right. They're not firing the head coach if they win the Super Bowl.
No, it's absurd. So I don't know, hope for what you want to hope for. I'm not going to tell you as a fan what to hope for, but I would think you'd want to win the Super Bowl. And if you win the Super Bowl, you're probably going to lose Kellen Moore. So, come to Jesus with it.
Yeah, I would say you definitely are. Let's get to our first commercial break. Hopefully we can catch up with Paul Domwich. If not, I have a couple other things to kick around with Johnny Mac on this Football Friday. Pretty good week. It's already come and gone. Mini camp has come and it is gone. So now we are in a 6 to 7 week lull period where we wait for the Eagles to get back on the field. I got to be honest, I enjoyed the mini camp. I know everybody makes fun of it and, it's helmets and shorts. I enjoyed
pajamas.
Pajamas, but I don't care. It's June, and I like to get my Eagles fix in. So this is the best look at the Eagles fix that you're going to get in June. I will take it.
The great Bobby King gets credit for the pajamas.
Yeah, Bobby King, who spoke this week for the Eagles. So pretty good stuff. We'll take our first commercial break. Thanks everybody for being in the chat. Amber, SMD, Crowley, BMO. What's up, BMO? Dank, Mike Fitter. He's always here giving good comments. We appreciate you being here, Mike. James Carver, Demetrius Brooks. What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys for being here. Make sure you drop a like on the show. Johnny Mac and I will be right back. Hopefully we can catch up with Paul Domwich, Hall of Fame selector, Damo. And then in hour number 2, we have Andrew DeCecco. So plenty to talk about with about an hour and 25 left to play on Birds 365. Stay tuned, everybody.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.